The recording just started for me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yep. Right. So I want to just give a quick intro of who I am as your new organizer of this group. If you've been here before, it's been a minute since there's been one of these. And if you're new, welcome. So my name is Brad. As it says here, I'm the organizer. I'm an author of a book called I Think, Therefore You Know. I'm also the host of the Agile for Agilists podcast. I work in Dearborn at Ford Credit, and I'm a Michigan guy. I was born in Grand Rapids, and I live in Farmington Hills now. So if you don't know me, there's a quick intro of me, but you're not really here for me. You're here for my buddy, Jon Kern. And as you can see, we have the next two guests lined up. These will be the second Wednesday of every month. I've also bugged Esther and Quentin to join us as well in future events. But for this one, Jon Kern was polite enough to help me kick this thing off and talk about how we reimagine Agile as we try to reimagine what this group and meetup could be. So on that, I will hand it over to you, Jon.
Well, thank you, Brad. My pleasure. And I don't know. I'm so tempted to say go Buckeyes, but I won't. It's because I'm from the Ohio State University. Yeah, it's great. Great. But I did work quite a bit in was it Walled Lake? Calling it right, a little bit north of Detroit. So yeah, I used to go to Detroit back when the airport was S-hole. It was like really bad. So that's because, you know, I was working when I was 10, not that I'm, you know, slightly older, but yeah, it was, and I would learn where M&M's 8 Mile, you know, like, instead of coming up with cool names, we'll just name the roads 8 miles, 9 mile, 10 mile. So yeah, Michigan's a cool place. Anyway, yeah, so thank you for allowing me to kick off maybe your reboot, your reimagining Agile Detroit. So ideally, this can be as conversational as you're willing to make it, those in the audience. Otherwise, I'll hopefully push some ideas, maybe hurt a little bit here and there, and try to get us past what might be known as the maybe some fake Agile stuff. So at any rate, what I do is take my engineering background, I think is a blessing in disguise, in that software wasn't my initial thrust. So been around a long time, did a lot of Defense Department work, did a lot of kind of what you might call real hands-on testing, including jet engine testing, and then morphed into doing software. And the flight centrifuge we have down here in Southeast Pennsylvania, it's no longer in operation, but it was a 50-foot arm centrifuge that I used for putting folks through. If you watch Top Gun, of course, you know how Goose died in a flat spin. Luckily, nobody actually died in flat spins, but they did lose a bunch of planes. So brought me into the world of software and crazy stuff, and never looked back, because for me, it's always about trying to deliver value. And unlike the lengthy period that it takes to produce something like a hunk of hardware, like a jet engine, software is awesome. I can produce value much faster. So that's really me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me all over the place. I'm an Agile consultant, love going out and working with teams on their real world. I often say I don't do training, because training's just in this false, pristine world, and you live in your real world. So me. It's about trying to face the music that you're facing and help you get into what I would consider experiencing agility. Because I bet I've done a year's worth of vibe coding in the past 6 months, if I had to guess, because it's super addictive. And really powerful. It's a problem. It's not the problem. The whole thing around, Agile is dead. Agile, in my opinion, as I've mentioned, it's just like software. It's a means to an end. It's not the end. So for me, Agile will never be dead. And then there's this world of developer experience, which I don't know if you're familiar with that phrase, but DevX. I've been working with Anita Zabig at Network Perspective for years. They have a developer experience tool. We also have one at Adaptavist. But to me, it's about canvassing what's really going on in your world. So much of what I think we need to do in the world of agility and AI is more about recognizing how do we react given our context. What are we doing? Because as I often joke, software would be easy if it weren't for all the people. And I don't know how familiar you are with the concept around complexity. And this is, you probably have heard of the Cynefin framework and all that kind of stuff, which seems a little philosophical, a little hoity-toity, but it's legitimate in some context that you need to really understand that certain things we do are super simple. Just get her done. Adding some simple features to something already existing. Other things might be complicated, a little harder to, wire something up. A little more complex business rules. Still, it's all knowable. And the idea about collaborating together, I often think about it's the thought bubbles above our head. When we say things, are we sure that they're, that the same ideas are appearing to the people we're talking with? So as you go from simple, the odds are pretty high, the agreement's there. As you go to complicated, it's starting to get a little wobbly. A system that is complex, and maybe like me, you had to look up what does VUCA mean when you heard the term, like VUCA. What the heck's that? People would say it as if everybody knows it. I think it came out of the military, maybe. But when things are volatile, uncertain, complex, and what's the A? I don't remember. But the complexity is real, and it's when things aren't knowable. And if you do not recognize you're in that complex area and you apply the same things that work in the simple or the complicated, you're probably going to be disappointed. Ambiguity, duh. Thank you, Frank. Yeah, because ambiguity is one of my favorite words. So this is super important to understand that you need to be on the lookout for this. And along these lines, where does AI and vibe coding play? Or think of it, from the software development lifecycle, where does AI and vibe coding play? In my humble opinion, as soon as you're in the world of complexity, the more that you understand what it takes to be agile, what do we mean by agility, the more you're able to have a holistic approach, the greater the odds you'll be successful. Because AI is not a savior, and it's also not the enemy. Just like back in the day when I was doing some of those Defense Department things, the personal computer came around, and now I didn't have to go to some mainframe or DECVAX or things like that. Now I get to do stuff at home, right? While it might be a threat to some folks who are used to the bigger systems, AI is not really a threat unless you don't understand maybe enough about what it takes to deliver value. So I think there's a few angles that I want to hit on, because AI, love it or hate it, I think all it's going to do is accentuate whatever you got going on. Now, it might protect you, because sometimes it can bring forth ideas that you may not have considered, but it's definitely able to drive you over the cliff faster. But it's also able to have success faster than I've ever experienced. And I personally use Replit primarily, which has Claude Opus under the covers, in terms of developing vibe coding. Amazing things that you can do. In my world, the number one priority is delivering value. Making the classic line is putting smiles on the customers' faces. Doing it frequently and doing it effectively, that means trying to do it as cheaply as possible and deliver the most value, the most bang for the buck. But it has to ride on the foundation of good architecture, good design, solid technical skills. At least I think so. I might get proven wrong. But a lot of it depends on what kind of a system are you trying to build. Like I quickly built a art criticism machine that I don't really care about, whether it is super resilient and all kinds of things, because it's just a fun thing. But my firefighting app, I care deeply about making sure it's resilient, making sure it's got all kinds of proper penetration tests and things designed for real world sorts of mission critical support. And thank you for Frank for the ambiguity thing, but you see here the ability to recognize and endure uncertainty and ambiguity. What do I mean by that? A lot of people, when faced with being in this very uncomfortable, complex world, they might want to ignore it. But if you can learn how to work with it, learn to recognize it, learn to deal with it, I submit in that fuzzy part of the ideas and, going from an idea to cash, so to speak, the uncertainty and the ambiguity might be the place that yields the opportunity for the most innovation, the most creativity, the most results. Because anybody can do simple stuff, and a lot of people can do complicated stuff. But dealing in really mastering, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, I guess is another way to put it. And also the positive developer experience. So that's a whole world unto itself I won't go into, but it's a multifaceted way to look at a team. Happy to talk about that. It's a fun exercise to do because it's anonymous, and you might get real world input that says what's going wrong and also what's going right. And I submit, how do you, the manifesto was brilliant in some sense, but also unreachable or ambiguous in another. There's that good word again. So how do you live the values and the principles of the manifesto? That's really important. And of course, the first one being collaboration. How do we build what I call a highly collaborative and deliberately developmental? And by developmental, I mean vertical development for the mind, for how our team are able to make their meaning. And you can grow. It's not like growing a skill, learning how to do vibe coding or database design, but the ability to create a culture that deliberately helps us grow, because that's how we A, have more fun, and B, solve problems more effectively. So the good old people, process, and tools. And the first bullet really is all about people, i.e. individuals and interactions over process and tools. I've been saying that for decades before the manifesto. So here we are 25 years later, still talking about something that I would submit we had no idea would be talked about 25 years later. So if you want to see more photos just for fun, you can find my Flickr account and you'll be able to figure out if it's my account or not. But you can find it for Jon Kern. There's Jim and Alistair. I remember I hadn't been skiing in about 6 years because we had our twin girl. So we had been skiing with our son and then kind of stopped. while the kids, were getting bigger. I literally flew from Snowbird to Montreal to go to some ski area in Canada, Mount Sutton. But here these guys are. The dude in the yellow is Alistair, and they're super good skiers, Jim and Alistair. And they say, "Hey, come on, John, we're gonna go down the black side." No, sorry, I'm gonna go back down the easier way. But it was a lot of fun being there, and being one of the youngsters amongst greats. But we're not really, here to talk about the photos. It's more about what I would submit is some very, in hindsight, some extremely humble words. And humility is a key requirement to being agile, because we don't know as much as we think we do. And I love the fact that we express this in not the past tense, not we have uncovered. All right, here you go, peons. Here's the tablets that we figured out. No, we are uncovering, and I still am. I'm still learning. It's still the hardest thing to do. So the other bit of humility is the fact that we've left it very ambiguous. Individuals and interactions over, not instead of, not or, but over. So that's on you to figure out where to go. But that's also extremely challenging for a lot of people who just want to be told what to do. Now, just where do I start, John? This manifesto stuff. I see these 4 values, and even worse, I see 12 principles. I'll just call attention to the top one, because I often say if you just pick 2 bullets to remember, it's the first value about individuals and interactions over process and tools, and it's the first principle about, you know what, if you're satisfying the customer, delivering value, something valuable to them, that's usually the kind of the bellwether, the primary thing you need to do. And I also shrink it down to this simplistic mind the gap. And what do I mean by gap? I mean the gap in time between taking action and doing something. And where has AI gotten us in terms of that? Certainly the unit test is a super small gap in time, and the behavior-driven test is a slightly bigger, longer time to run. But producing an entire application or big major feature set and then showing it and then getting feedback. Anyway, mind the gap is another simplistic way to think in an agile manner. Because try as you might, you can do all kinds of process and tools. Just because you're doing Scrum, you might be really good at Scrum, but you might still suck at being agile and responding and delivering value. So how do we combat that, and where does AI fit in? I don't know if this is, and feel free to build up some questions or build up some comments. I'm not quite paying attention to those right now, but love to talk about this and where you stand. But for me, Agile takes constant partial attention. And if you do not have a holistic team, if you do not have what I would consider a solid sense of a purpose, the age of AI might overwhelm you. So I'm going to just share a few things a few slides that we can get into some Q&A. But I think it's critical to really understand what it takes to go from an idea to something, out the door to cash or something like this. So I'm going to show you a few different perspectives of what how I think about doing software development. And I've always had trouble with presenting anything, Brad, you had to write a book. A book is necessarily sequential, page. In some sense, I can poke holes at this. Do I really do this? Well, probably not. Release plan, do I do release plans anymore? Well, kind of, maybe, sort of. Depends what you're talking about. I have some ideas, but they're nothing like when I was growing up and learning, real project management and real, heavyweight software products, software development. Instead, it could just be a bulleted list on a wiki for a roadmap. And we're going to do this chunk first, and we have these expected outcomes. Anyway, on this journey, you can see all kinds of elements that I'll touch on, but it's extremely nonlinear in some sense, but yet it has a inexorable march towards the vision, and that's the key. I need all of the brains on the team to help us get to that vision. And the only way that works is if we constantly understand what is our purpose, what's our mission, what is value, what are we trying to produce. And since my brain is too small to hold lots of ideas, I apply all of this very recursively, because most struggles with scaling, I submit, are just poor architecture, because size shouldn't matter. And so from a recursive point of view, down from the product down to an individual feature, you need to have a vision, expected outcome, just enough requirements. Like I often joke, I was just on a long interview earlier this morning about, I do waterfall all the time. It's just really short, but I get, just enough requirements. I might do a little domain modeling to try to understand what it is we're talking about, and how to build what I would consider our knowledge base, or lingua franca. Just enough architecture, and that depends largely on what it is we're trying to build. Because some stuff, it's just another web app, I don't care, just pick one. And other times it's, I'm also about consistency, building something in a very consistent manner so there's no surprises. And the common refrain of, and ship as soon as possible, which now with tools like Replit, for example, I can ship as, always be shipping. It's crazy what you can do now. A lot of the stuff used to be really hard. It used to be very specialized. The idea for me is being able to figure out where just enough is. This is another super important point, that if you have enough humility to realize the ideas we have are just hypotheses, including a requirement that people are really sure we need this level of detail, you might, and you might not. So I was just talking to a man he used to be a young man back in the 80s when we worked together in DoD stuff, but he works in a place that the Navy ship comes in. They've got to do some software upgrades and do some software development and get things deployed and put in place before it goes back to sea trials. There you go. That's a real requirement of a deadline. The thing's got to, because they're long running. It's not like they come in and they leave a week later. So these are long running. So a few times in my career, I've had legitimate, what I would consider deadline, like hey, can you get this thing done before our one shot at the trade show, so I can demonstrate. This is like Grundfos, a huge pump company manufacturer, build something. Can your team build this for us? We want to start using what you have teased us with an idea. Can you get it done by such and such a date? But most of the time dates are fake. In this case, when dates are real, the just enough is so important. That what I mean by that is not to over engineer requirements, not to do too much domain modeling or too much. And how do you know what just enough is? And I often say, as a, much like Mind the Gap is a way to remind yourself that how long are we going before we get feedback? The just enough requirements is, are you learning more about the need or the domain that's materially impacting anything you might choose to do? So sometimes I'm learning, I do upfront architecture for a big idea. I might think about it harder. Something that's got some crazy performance or some crazy, scaling, whatever it is that catches my engineering mind's attention that this is something important. I might bore in on something to learn just enough about that to either put it in a box and I'm comfortable, or ask more questions. But too often we get just a crap ton of requirements that, you have to learn how to be polite and say, I don't care, because I don't. It doesn't matter if I need 67 properties on a user. I know I got a user. Like, yeah, in other words, you don't need to drown in requirements. I just need enough. Or, how can you be sure you're not overbuilding? Well, the easiest way to be sure is to build something too small. So I often say, how do you figure out what just enough is? Think of the smallest thing you can do to deliver the value. And maybe like usually you can deliver 80% of the value and 20% of the effort. But with AI, that kind of goes out the window because I can deliver 120% of the value, maybe. But the point is, when you're trying to figure out what to build, think of the smallest thing you can build to satisfy that customer's need and then make it smaller. Build less. I often say build uncomfortably less. I want you to feel embarrassed. Mostly because when you're learning this technique, you will undoubtedly still build more than I would. I often say I'll challenge you to a duel. I will outsmall you on a requirement. I guarantee you I can think of something smaller. But I've seen so many teams miss deadlines and then they call me in. I'm looking at what they're building and they're overbuilding. It's ridiculous. It's that ego. Someone asked for all of this. You don't know enough about what the users really need, and maybe actually are just an order taker. The point is, even in that environment, still deliver less. This is the simple reason why. As long as you can withstand a little bit of, they tell you they still need more, and you kind of go, yeah, I knew that. And you don't get embarrassed. The point is you can always add more, but you can never take back that time and energy that you wasted. So do uncomfortably less than you're being asked. And then that opens up all kinds of things. You've number one, if they truly needed more, you'll get that feedback, and now you're comfortably doing more. Or sometimes that you still might not think they need more, and I still just delay. Oh, well, we'll get that a little bit later. Pretty soon they stop asking because, you know what? You satisfied enough of their need. Anyway, nobody needs Microsoft Word bloat on every freaking product, and AI is going to kill us with bloat if there's nobody stopping the AI from saying, hey, what about this? I could build this. Oh, sure. Click. Yeah, spend more of your tokens and build more bloat. Anyway, that was a little bit too much time on just enough, but that's what just enough means, is try to learn how much you can get away with by doing less. Sounds silly, but I do have a slide, but my slides are like being humbled, even though you're right. And the other one is be lazy, because you should be lazy. But the key now is AI is coming along and can do so much so fast, so easy, that you really have to be on top of your game not to suddenly get more than you can figure out. And this is another way to think about what we do for a living. As I said, I've had a few things in my career with real deadlines that needed real commitments, and no, there was no points if I missed the deadline of the showing the software during a trade show. That better work, because now they're going to click on it and we're going to get all kinds of specifying engineers signed up. So there's no points for missing that. So I often think about your big fuzzy ideas. How do you start breaking those down? Especially if you're in the complex world, you really need to work sometimes, decompose that. And a lot of people make mistakes trying to make commitments early on, and you had product, managers demanding stuff. And you need to figure out what this looks like in your world. And I'll share the slides, Brad, so, in case everyone wants to dig into what are these things, because there's a lot in here that I won't go into. But where does my I use pseudo BDD even as part of requirements, because it's a great simple way to specify something fairly unambiguously. And then actual BDD is very unambiguous. But the idea is, how do you go from the fuzzy unknown to something concrete and in Jira and being built? So all along the way, you need to apply all of the Agile principles and the ideas around, can I judge what I'm doing? Because I want everybody to try to make the things smaller until we get something out the door sooner, and we don't get bogged down with excess. Because now, it's so easy to overbuild, and it's so easy to have that really happy-go-lucky AI do things that it knows are going to please you. So it's got kind of a funny concept. But now, where the calculus that I'm using in my head these days, typically I would in the area of let's build something new together. We've got some requirements, so I'm working with the subject matter experts, starting to sketch ideas, and I'm going to sketch them, doing a little modeling, capturing the requirements, and I'll probably go away and do some balsamic UI creation, just some rough mock-ups. I tended to always use rough mock-ups, not Figma, because Figma makes it look too real. But I've changed that. I kind of just start doing stuff. If there's an area where I'm curious about the UX, I'll have it create a few different examples. So now it's so much different in terms of where you can focus and where you're going to calculate. I'm not so beholden to my code. I'm more readily able to throw stuff away. So the hard problem is if you're not careful and if you don't put guardrails in, if you don't put good engineering and good quality and tests and I often put smoke tests, run it even when I'm committing locally, smoke tests are running at least, versus the CI/CD. So it's crazy what you can do now, but at the same time, you can easily get overwhelmed. So it's a brave new world, and I think it brings to light the ideas we might have up front. They start to come to life much sooner, reducing that gap in time between getting a request and showing something. It's amazing, but it's not without its challenges and its risks. So I think there's all the more reason to double down on agility, to double down on developer experience, to make sure we got a handle on what's going on, and I would say triple down on making sure if you don't have users sitting next to you, either for real or metaphorically, the risk of overbuilding is super high. Because I think I'm unabashedly smitten with what I can do faster than ever, and with what I would consider pretty incredible. I wanted to, for this firefighter app, a client, big elevator manufacturer, says, "Oh, we need to do one of those security audit things." Oh yeah, I've done that. I haven't done that in a while, but now I have this brand new. It's in staging right now. It's about to be released. But I was able to run all kinds of security audits, penetration tests, and I went even further. I said, I'm going to make this so robust. I'm going to capture all of the needs, the severity, almost like incidents, all the findings. Now it's in a database. Now I have a super admin page. And as I'm, working through developing, real stuff and migrating some, help page, different things like that, I tackle one of the findings. Okay, let's go do this. Oops, yeah, I forgot to wire up, you shouldn't let someone try to hammer the login, more than 10 times a second, that kind of thing. But now I've got this really robust, defensible thing built on top of my app that sure thing, IT security. Here's all the OWASP. Here's all the pen tests. I mean, now I didn't pay for a human to do that full of a pen test, but nonetheless, those kinds of things I always wanted to do, and I did some of them on bigger projects with bigger budgets. Now it's me working at night or on the weekend, asking it to do these sorts of things, and I've got a robust, amazing system that I can at least show them. Am I going to do ISO 9000 now? I mean, we're not that big, so I don't think so. But at least it's in there, and I wrote down why, that it's deferred. So anyway, it's crazy what you can do. And so for me, it is a wonderful game changer, and for me anyway, and what I'm able to do and how I'm able to help teams try to consider how can we leverage this? How can we build more? Okay, so fire away with. Should I open up the chats? And people can come off mute if they want. I mean, okay, so we got the VUCA stuff. We got, okay. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, thanks, Brad. Yeah, I see you put in the Flickr stuff. Yeah, there's even the 10th year anniversary in there somewhere. AI, okay, no, probably butcher the name, but Jing's Zhao or Shou. AI agents seemingly take the opposite and overbuild on some of the most simple prompts. Yeah, like I had to coerce it to do test-driven development and to do BDD. It's really funny. Matter of fact, my experience doing what I would consider BDD in probably a React app, maybe. I eventually had to tell it to use Playwright BDD. It was hysterical how it didn't get what a true TDD system should look like. And in other words, I was doing BDD and it was trying to use unit tests instead of something like Cucumber. And what was it doing when every time I had to click on a button or something like that, it made a new method and a new method and a new method. Like, no, oh my God, you're repeating code. It's so, does that matter? These I ask myself, does that matter? I don't know. It still got the job done, but it kind of matters to me. Like, no, you don't get it. The point is you should build a library of things to do common web testing. And then finally I said, oh, start using Playwright BDD. So it will definitely overbuild and it will definitely screw up, and it will, sometimes I come off of fighting with Replit, Claude on the covers, I guess. And I'll go, well, dude, you're freaking swirling. And then I'll go to Grok and I'll explain what's going on. And then I'll even tell them. So they start working together. It's pretty funny. So yeah, they're not perfect and they'll aim to please. And I think now they've got this new thing where, oh, I think, here's a little hole it's funny because they do have agents like, well, I just did a review with the architect and the architect pointed this out and maybe you want to build that. And I'm like, nah, yeah. So anyway, it's if you know what it takes, and sorry to say if, because the if is real. I'm not that good at anything, but I know a little about a lot of things. I know enough how to get stuff out the door over the decades, but I'm not the best developer. I'm not the best architect. I'm decent. I'll get it done. But the point is, if you were compartmentalized, I wasn't. I always bit off more than I could chew. And I had great mentors and I still get together with my Naval Air Propulsion Center, my first job, jet engine testing. We still get together every year. And I still thank my mentors who, left me in a wonderful shape. So knowing what you need to do is a big advantage on making sure you smack the AI into shape because, that's a great point. On the same vein of AI can scale it faster than your success. James Shore, blog post about AI's impact on the long term. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just something I was thinking of this morning. I have a very unloved technicaldebt.com blog. Since the early 90s, I was really into like code metrics. I used to use PC Lint. And I remember doing this big IBM project, probably 200 to 300 problem domain classes, huge. Really, that's where I cut my teeth on big projects and architected it into major modules with really clear interfaces. And then the amount that we could produce, it was like a Rails type architecture I created. But I put in metrics into my little, whatever it was, visual C++, I don't remember. Some IDE, and then I built it into TogetherSoft tools. And I thought about, wow, I wonder if I should put some like cyclomatic complexity in. Like that's one of my favorite. Put some metrics inside because if you don't watch what it's building, or if you don't accidentally stumble upon, sometimes you'll stumble on it. I know some people build agents to sit post commit Replit, for example, and the agent is doing something, looking at it. So you can build, you can wire up, sort of, I don't want to say competition, but literally, like somebody else to review, some other thing that you're controlling to review. So, it's pretty amazing what you can do now. And for me, it's allows me to get a lot of my imagination and things I wish I had over the years that I couldn't afford. Even, with the teams, like sometimes you just draw the line on what are we building? Like, John, why would you want to build a way for us to onboard new customers automatically, John? We're so used to taking the server down on weekends and adding new things to the database. I'm like, really? I'm sorry. Right. So how do I justify that? I don't. I just do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to build something the way it should be built. I don't care. But, in some sense, that's maybe a little bit flippant of me. But yeah, how do you sort of control what's being built? Okay, Lalit. What I mentioned was there's something that when I'm in the flow of building some things inside of Replit really quick, it knows, like for this one, I have lots of different projects. For this one project in particular, I started building smoke tests probably the late 90s, when I remember downloading a daily build of the TogetherSoft IDE and something simple not working. Like literally the first, like, it's completely unusable. So I was like, okay, dudes, like, you need to build a test that just make sure simple things work. So a lot of times I'll build that into my web apps, my apps. So that's just something that's really fast, ding, 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 so it can be run all the time. I do anything, and 14 out of 14 smoke test passing, and I can make sure that's in the pipeline. But it actually does it on the fly when I'm doing things. So I didn't mean to say. And then the full end-to-end test, that's a little more of a scheduled thing in the CI/CD. So it's both. It's not either or. I hope that explains it. Nicholas, I see your hands raised.
Yes. Hi. I'm just trying to turn off my camera here. Yes. So, hi, John. I want to say again, thank you for everything you have been teaching us. I have been attending, previous lectures and webinars, that you have been, kind of like, you're trying to mentor us, essentially, the way, some people have mentored you in the past, you're trying to do the same, for the next generation. And, again, I would like to say thank you for, what you've done, as an individual and as part of the community as well. I have here the Agile Manifesto on the other side of my screen here, and I'm just thinking, how progressive you guys were, when you came up with all this, like, there's nothing that's, we can add, even after, 30 years now. And, you're talking about individuals' interactions over processes and tools, and you're talking about customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So this is something that a lot of people, still can get. And, on my team, I call it about the collaboration between the individuals as well, right? So collaborate with the users, the subject matter experts, the interested parties on the business side, but also work between, the team and come up with something that's going to be better than what, the individuals can, develop or provide, to a team or to their users, right? So I see when, like the AI thing, came out, like 3 years ago, I thought, it's not going to help me. Jeff Sutherland jumped on it, and he said, oh, the AIs are doing this and all that stuff. And, he has his own consulting company, he's selling, a lot of things, related to this thing. But, for my job, as a Scrum Master or as an Agilist or Agile coach, Kanban professional, it's just another tool. Right. Yeah. So the team can select, how they can use this new tool. It's not going to help me, if I'm going to try to motivate a team or if I'm trying to, remove an impediment or enable a team or bust down a silo. The AI can't help me.
That's right? Great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, certainly. Thank you for those wonderful comments. And I'll send you that $20 later.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
But yeah, it is just a tool, and I like how you're phrasing it. I mean, what's kind of funny is it can what I would think sometimes you can use it. Like my wife might say, call it my friend. Well, you can ask your friend. Okay, it might be going a little far, but it's a curious thing that for those who can embrace and keep an eye on, it's just a tool. Admittedly, it's really powerful and it's crazy. I mean, I've been building products that use some of the fundamental AI components recently too, around like the embeddings and the ways of making meaning and crazy, AI built tools using AI inside of it. I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, it has a potential to help you, and sometimes you might run into problems that I'll ask it, like I'll put things in Grok, for example, about whatever, and then maybe you can get some curiosity going and get some ideas. But yeah, it's not going to take your job, and it's not going to solve the people problems. And I think what it can do is help in that collaboration. Like pairing is often challenging, but when I'm working with either a colleague or a more on the user side, or not a techie, and we're sitting there, it's almost like triple, right? It's me, Replit, and the person. So I don't know what you call that. It's kind of pairing, but except there's this other thing. That's and the cool thing there is you can try ideas and be chatting, human to human, and collaborating even more while it's doing stuff. So there's this really interesting, different dynamic that happens.
More interactions.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a weird thing, but yeah, I appreciate you pointing it out. It's not, it's not a threat. I mean, it's some things will go away because of it, and that might be you need to find more valuable things they do. Like I said, if you are stuck in very unit wise, compartmentalized, you're being held down into a silo, or you think, I make my meaning about being this expert. Well, careful, because your expertise might be anyway. That's something to be aware of. But yes, thank you, Fadi. I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And since you're giving $20, I'm gonna thank you for whatever you're doing to give me the $20.
On it. Yeah. Next,
So I've
next
been dealing with AI for the last probably few years. Even before we talked about AI, we did expert systems in the past, and
right.
it just was a way of us looking at facts and rules and driving change. But in general, and by the way, I did do TDD using AI. So Jeff Langer and myself wrote a couple articles that we published on LinkedIn that walk through a way to do TDD and create usable code, because majority of the code out there is garbage, and AI is mimicking the garbage, and it's going to give you garbage. But if you give it the right prompts, you will be able to get something good out of it. In general, we are in a new era in humanity. In the past, before the introduction of any technologies, probably 80% of people used to be in agriculture, and that's the world they were in, and that's how they knew how to survive and exist. As a human, as society, as people, we are evolving, and this is another level of this evolution that we're going through. AI is extremely important as we are expanding the way we think, interact, and function. The Scrum Master who came on and talked about AI is not going to replace me. Well, I use Jira, I use Rovo within Jira, and it helps me tremendously to go through tons of epics and stories and figure out a way to organize and structure. And I'm much better
Yeah, I mean, well said. I would tend to agree. I think, yeah, it is a crazy multiplier, force multiplier. And Craig, yeah, I agree. That's why I said they use the word coerce. And similar, like Fadi, what you and Jeff were probably doing is, yeah, sometimes you really have to coerce it to like, no, stop that. It's I'm trying to do this, and you have to fight with it. Like it literally feels like you're fighting with it, because it's doing what it's doing. And so the ability to try to put guidelines in and skills, sometimes when I would see it do something repeatedly stupid, I would actually tell it like, God. And it's fun sometimes to get I enjoy a snarky replit or grok. I've put snark in code before. I've long ago I've said, yeah, if you don't code with a bit of a sense of humor at times, like I remember doing some stupid thing that if you repeated an error too many times, the message got worse and worse. Like, anyway, I don't want to, your mileage may vary with putting little funny things in code. But yeah, I think the ability to control it at the level you want, to the size you want, and that's part of the challenge, because yeah, it'll happily generate all kinds of code at faster than you can blink. Jing, you have something. I know you've been active in the chat. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No,
and how do you say your name?
Shing. It's like a SH.
Okay, Shing.
Yeah. God, what was I thinking? When you mentioned writing guidelines for the agents so that they don't go off the rails, and for anyone who's done it, I'm curious if you're finding like a type of categorization of the things you're trying to encode. Is there like specific types that you're seeing like you're trying to encode over and over again? Like for myself, it feels like when I'm writing some of the guidelines, not skill so much, but like the guidelines, Agents MD or Claude MD or whatever, I feel like I'm trying to distill my past experience and things that burn me into something, like putting it down to words, like almost writing like a mini blog post or tweet, I suppose, depending on the length, right? But I'm just curious for other folks who's had to wrangle with these systems, what are some of the things that or category of things that you're trying to capture and you're trying to impart?
Yeah, it's a good question. By the way, sometimes I'll take that messy stuff and like throw it in Grok or somebody else and say, can you make it like a better prompt? Okay, thanks. Because yeah, you're right. You might, and when you were talking about, I feel like I'm just telling it to stop doing things that were annoying. Yeah, I was thinking of the Dutch boy with how many fingers in the dike. Yeah, that's a lot of times what I was doing was stop it, and then you put something in there and say, please remember to do this. But that does feel reactive. versus proactive. The proactive stuff for me was more around some of the testing concepts, to try to get it to like get that in its head, so to speak. Did anybody else have any answers for Xing about, do you teach it certain things, or because it is that's a good question, things to share. Yeah, I should go look. A lot of times I do it on the fly, and I'm not going to say I've built up a little arsenal. I did bookmark something that was talking about Claude MD, and I thought, oh yeah, I want to read that. Haven't read it yet, but yeah, I think that is one of the keys, to try to put some guardrails and guidelines, and yeah, just keep after it. But it is amazing. I'm with you, Fadi. Like, I can't believe what I can get done in the speed.
Yep. Yeah, so Jeff was writing a plugin for TDD, and we assumed it's going to take us closer to 6 months. And we had a deadline. We wanted to present it to Ford within the next 3 months. Less than 2 weeks, the whole thing was done, because he used the method to write the plugin and test it, and we were able to demo it without any issue or problem. So yeah, it's a way to really speed things up, as well as verify and make sure things are done right.
Yeah, right. I've said for a long time ago, just with cute things like, I love Rails. Rails is like where were you when I was doing all that hard C++ domain-driven development kind of a thing? So I love that it's very opinionated. I love it because it matches my opinion, so of course I like it. But Cucumber and RSpec, like, for a long time I've said there is no excuse not to have good, high quality engineering practices. It's so easy today. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what do you mean you don't have this, that, or the other thing? It's so, and now, like, I remember when I was first starting to deploy Repa, because my current production firefighter app's running on AWS and Fargate. Anything goes down, another one spins up, and I can deploy at any time, right? Super advanced, and that takes a lot of work, especially freaking AWS. It's so complicated. A friend of mine really did it, I'll be honest. And I'm like, oh, Repa, exactly how are you deploying? And is it resilient? Does it? Yep, same stuff. Oh, cool, right? I mean, it's crazy. Like, literally, I didn't even have to ask it for a resilient deploy. No, it doesn't take it down. It just put it. Same thing. At a click. Like, are you kidding me? I can go on, but I won't. I mean, it's not perfect. But I will say, I did have a big bug with a Rails app, because they said we don't really support Rails, and the bug was with their infrastructure. That Replit said, go ask them, because it ain't us. Go submit a ticket, and I got a human. And humans helped, and the humans admitted, you know what, we don't really have anybody on our staff that knows this well enough. Sorry. Oh, but do this, and here's the workaround. Anyway, like, so there was human. I was shocked that a human showed up and actually acted like I would just expect any of us to act, like being like legitimately real. Yeah, sorry. It's not one of our supported platforms, but but it works, just kind of not perfectly. Anyway.
All right. Time check. It's 2:01. So we are at our time box for this week, or I guess this month. Thank you, Jon, for joining us.
My pleasure.
I love the conversation. So let's continue this. Surveys in the chat. If people would help me learn what you liked and didn't like, I'd appreciate it. And we'll be back next month.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing
you.
your afternoon with me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for setting up, Brad.
Bye.